Aaron Vale stood at the edge of the dark mine, the wind of the empty moon whipping around him. The ground beneath his boots was cracked and dry, and the air smelled faintly of metal and stone. The mine had been closed for decades. Every map called it dangerous. Every story said the same thing, for dragons lived inside, ancient and fierce, and no one who went in ever came out. Most people stayed far away. But Aaron did not care about legends. He had come to help, not to fight. He adjusted the straps of his pack and stepped forward. His lamp cut through the first layer of darkness. The mine mouth yawned like a black mouth waiting to swallow him. Cold air brushed his face, and for a moment he hesitated. Deep inside he could feel something alive moving. The stories were true, the mine was not empty. He took a slow breath and walked in. The walls of the tunnel were jagged, with veins of glowing minerals that gave faint light. The sound of his boots echoed. As he went deeper, the air grew warmer, almost heavy like the breath of some giant creature. Then he heard it, a low, steady hum vibrating through the stone. Aaron stopped and listened. The hum was not musical. It was alive. He moved forward carefully, keeping his voice low. "I'm not here to hurt you," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. The tunnel widened into a huge cavern. In the shadows, for massive shapes were barely visible. He could not see their full forms yet, but the glow of their eyes cut through the darkness. Red, green, silver, and gold, each eye burned with intelligence and caution. The dragons were watching him. They did not move, only waited. Aaron knelt down and opened his pack. He had brought food and water, small things to show he meant no harm. He placed it on the ground carefully, making no sudden moves. The dragons shifted slightly. Their bodies were enormous, scales shining faintly even in the darkness. Each scar on their limbs told a story of battles long past. One of them, the red-eyed dragon, hissed softly but did not attack. Aaron smiled faintly. That was good. They were testing him. "I know you have been alone for a long time," he said. His voice echoed slightly. "I'm not like the others. I will not hurt you. I will stay." The dragons tilted their heads. They were curious but still cautious. For a moment, the cavern was quiet except for the sound of his breathing and the low hum that seemed to come from the dragons themselves. Aaron stood and walked slowly toward the largest dragon, the one with silver eyes. He could feel its strength, but he did not tremble. He placed his hand on a nearby rock and let his fingers brush the dragon's scales without touching it directly. He wanted to show respect, not dominance. The dragon sniffed the air, sensing him, but it did not flinch. Hours passed as Aaron sat in the cavern. He made small movements, talking softly, sharing water, and placing food carefully. The dragons watched. At first, their eyes were cold and distant. Slowly, they began to relax, curling their enormous bodies closer together. One of the dragons, the smallest one with golden eyes, inched forward, lowering its massive head. Aaron held still, letting the dragon decide. After a tense moment, it nuzzled his shoulder lightly, a gesture of trust. Aaron felt a warmth in his chest. He realized that trust here was not given lightly. These dragons had been feared, used, and abandoned. Most humans would have run. Most humans would have attacked. But he did not. And in that they sensed something different. He was not like the others. Night came, or what counted as night on this moon. The cavern grew darker, though the minerals in the walls still glowed faintly. Aaron lit a small fire carefully, keeping it low so it would not scare them. The dragons curled around the edges of the cavern, observing him. He ate a small meal and watched them. Each one seemed to have a personality. The red-eyed dragon was bold, always watching the entrance. The green-eyed one seemed curious, leaning closer whenever he moved. The silver-eyed dragon was calm, the leader perhaps. The gold-eyed one was cautious, testing him in small ways. Aaron spoke softly, telling them about the world outside. He told them humans could be kind, that not every explorer wanted to take advantage of them. The dragons listened as best as they could, understanding in ways beyond words. No fire, no roar, no threats, just quiet words and patience. The next day Aaron explored deeper. He mapped the cavern, noting places where the dragons could be comfortable. He cleaned parts of the old tunnels, removing debris that had fallen over time. He found old tools and remnants of cages, evidence of how cruel the dragons had been treated. He touched the walls where they had once been chained, whispering apologies. The dragons followed him slowly, their massive shadows moving behind him. Days passed. The dragons grew more confident. One of them, the green-eyed dragon, finally allowed Aaron to touch its head gently. He stroked its scales carefully, speaking words of friendship. The other dragons watched, some leaning forward, some staying cautious, but none showing aggression. It was a small victory, but it was enough. Aaron smiled. He knew he could not leave, not yet. The world outside was dangerous, filled with people who feared dragons. But here in the dark mine he had found something rare: trust. The dragons waited, and he waited with them. In this silence, a bond was forming. The dragons had expected a human to come for power, for glory, or for conquest. Instead, Aaron came for care, for patience, and for presence. And the dragons, after centuries of waiting, found themselves hoping that he would stay. Aaron sat in the center of the cavern that night, fire low, dragons around him, eyes glowing faintly. Outside, the wind of the moon continued to howl. Inside there was calm. A human had come where no one dared, and the dragons watched, not with fear but with curiosity. For the first time in centuries the mine felt like a home. Aaron woke to the faint glow of the cavern walls. The 4 dragons lay around him, their massive bodies coiled in the corners. He could see every scar on their scales, every mark that told a story of pain and fear. The air was thick with their presence, heavy but not threatening. He knew they remembered chains, not just the metal that had bound them but the fear that came with it. They had been used as weapons long ago, commanded by voices that cared nothing for their lives. He moved carefully, letting his feet touch the ground lightly. The smallest dragon, the golden-eyed one, stirred and stretched its neck toward him. Aaron offered a piece of food. The dragon sniffed it, then accepted it slowly. The red-eyed dragon watched from the shadows, its eyes narrowing, still cautious but curious. The green-eyed dragon stayed close to the cavern wall, its body tense. The silver-eyed dragon, the largest of them all, lay with its head raised, observing Aaron like a king watching a stranger in his hall. Aaron knew he had to earn their trust, not demand it. He began talking softly, telling them simple things about his life, about the humans who had treated him kindly. He showed no fear, no sudden movements, only patience. The dragons listened in their own way, moving slightly closer, testing him with small gestures. One of the golden eyes brushed his hand with its snout. The red eyes flicked, then relaxed. Slowly the dragons began to feel something they had not felt for centuries: safety. He explored the cavern carefully, noticing the remnants of old cages and chains. Rusted metal hung from the walls, silent reminders of the dragon's past. Aaron touched the chains gently. "I am sorry," he whispered, though no one could hear him except the dragons. They seemed to understand, or at least sense the meaning behind his words. One of them huffed softly, the sound vibrating through the stone floor. Aaron smiled faintly. Even the smallest sign of recognition mattered. Each dragon had a different personality. The red-eyed one was bold and wary, the first to test any movement. The green-eyed one was curious, watching every small detail. The silver-eyed dragon seemed calm, almost wise, observing everything before acting. The golden-eyed dragon was cautious but gentle, learning slowly that the human could be trusted. Aaron treated each dragon differently, matching his gestures to their moods. He fed them carefully, spoke softly, and never forced himself on them. Days passed and Aaron began to see small changes. The dragons no longer flinched at his presence. They allowed him to touch their scales gently, leaning into the contact. The green-eyed dragon followed him through the tunnels, its huge body moving silently, curious about everything he did. The silver-eyed dragon sometimes nudged him with its snout, testing him as if asking, "Will you stay?" Aaron always stayed. He cleaned debris from the tunnels, fixed small broken rocks to make resting places for them, and shared water from his packs. The dragons remembered pain, but they began to remember something new too: kindness. They had never had a human who cared, who stayed without asking for power or glory. Aaron did not try to dominate them. He did not shout or threaten. He simply existed in the cavern, showing patience and respect. Slowly, the dragon's long memories of chains began to fade when he was near. They could not forget completely, but they could learn that not all humans were cruel. One evening, the red-eyed dragon shifted closer to him. Its massive head hovered over Aaron's shoulder, not in aggression but in curiosity. Aaron reached up carefully and stroked the dragon's jaw. The scales were warm under his hand. The dragon closed its eyes slightly, a quiet sign of trust. The golden-eyed dragon inched closer, nudging him gently. Aaron laughed softly. It was not a loud sound, just a small laugh, but it made the dragons watch him with new interest. Aaron spoke again, telling stories of the world outside, about humans who had protected dragons in other places, about people who valued life over power. The dragons listened, their bodies still but alert. They could not fully understand his words, but the tone and calm in his voice spoke volumes. The silver-eyed dragon lowered its massive head near him, the first time it had moved without tension. Aaron felt a surge of hope. They were beginning to trust him bit by bit. One day, while exploring deeper into the tunnels, Aaron found more evidence of the dragon's suffering. Broken stones and old chains lay in piles. Some parts of the mine had collapsed, trapping corners where dragons had once been chained. He cleared the debris carefully, speaking quietly. The dragons followed, sometimes nudging stones themselves, helping in their own way. Aaron realized that trust worked both ways. They were learning that he was not just a visitor, they were learning that he cared for them. The dragons began small gestures of comfort. The red-eyed one would rest near him while he ate. The green-eyed one would circle him slowly, watching for threats but not moving away. The silver-eyed dragon stayed near the center, calm and steady. The golden-eyed dragon would touch his hand lightly when he fed them. It was not much, but it was progress. The mine, once a place of fear and chains, was becoming a place of quiet trust. Aaron understood that this was only the beginning. The dragons had long memories and their scars ran deep. He could not erase centuries of fear, but he could show that one human could be different. He could show that patience and care could create bonds stronger than chains. As night fell, the cavern grew quiet. The dragons curled near him, each in their corner, watching and breathing slowly. Aaron sat in the middle, exhausted but satisfied. He had not fought, had not demanded, had not used force. And yet, the dragons had chosen to accept him in their space. For the first time in decades they felt safe, not because they had power but because someone had stayed. Aaron looked around the cavern, his heart full. He had come to help them, not knowing if they would ever trust him. And now he could see the small beginnings of hope. The dragons remembered chains, yes, but now they also remembered kindness. They remembered that someone had come and stayed, not to use them but to care for them. And in that simple act, a new bond was forming, one that could last a lifetime. The quiet of the mine lasted only so long. One morning, Aaron heard a low hum far above the cavern. At first he thought it was the wind, but it was different, stronger, mechanical, and moving toward them. He stood and climbed to the edge of the tunnel. Through a crack in the rocks, he could see small lights flickering in the darkness above the mine. Ships, several of them hovering silently. The hum grew louder. He knew the galaxy had remembered the dragons. The 4 dragons stirred, sensing the approaching presence. Their bodies tensed, eyes glowing brightly in the dark. The red-eyed dragon let out a low rumble, deep and warning, while the golden-eyed dragon pressed closer to Aaron, moving protectively. Even the silver-eyed dragon, calm until now, raised its massive head. The green-eyed dragon circled slowly, watching the shadows above. All 4 of them understood that something had changed, outsiders had come. Aaron climbed down carefully and stood in the center of the cavern. He looked at the dragons and spoke softly. "Stay calm. I will handle this." They watched him, trusting him enough to let him try. He ran to the nearest entrance and stepped outside into the faint light of the approaching ships. A group of alien soldiers landed, tall and armored, their weapons pointed at the mine. Their leader stepped forward. "The dragons belong to the galaxy," it said in a harsh tone. "They must be reclaimed or destroyed." Aaron shook his head. "No, they do not belong to anyone. They have been prisoners for too long. They deserve freedom." The leader frowned. "A human? You cannot stop us. Move aside or face the consequences." Aaron's heart pounded, but he stood firm. "I will not move." The dragons rumbled behind him, their bodies tense but still in the shadows. The humans outside could not see them yet, but they could feel the power waiting within the mine. The soldiers advanced carefully, weapons ready. Aaron raised his hand slowly, showing he carried nothing dangerous. He spoke again, louder this time. "I am asking for peace. These dragons will not harm anyone if left alone. You do not need to fight them." A few of the soldiers hesitated. They had heard the stories of dragons destroying whole fleets, but they also saw a lone human standing without fear. Their minds struggled to understand. Inside the cavern, the dragons moved closer to Aaron, watching the humans cautiously. They did not attack. They only waited, as if sensing that this human was different. Aaron knew this was the moment to prove that trust could work both ways. "If you want them, you must earn it," he said. "You cannot take them by force. They have their own will." The soldiers whispered among themselves, unsure what to do. Some lowered their weapons slightly. The red-eyed dragon stepped forward slowly, its massive head cutting through the shadows. It did not roar or attack. It only moved, showing its size and strength. The aliens paused, recognizing the danger. The green-eyed dragon followed, circling behind Aaron, ready to act if needed. The silver-eyed dragon raised its wings slightly, the faint glint of scales visible even in low light. The golden-eyed dragon nudged Aaron gently, a silent question, "Are you safe?" Aaron nodded. "I am," he whispered. 4 hours, the standoff continued. The aliens were cautious, the dragons patient, and Aaron calm. He spoke softly to the dragons, telling them to remain quiet. They listened. He spoke to the humans, explaining that the dragons were not weapons anymore, that they had been used and abandoned, that taking them now would only bring pain. Slowly, some of the soldiers began to lower their weapons, understanding that brute force could not work here. The leader frowned, frustrated. "You are only one human," it said. "You cannot stop the galaxy." Aaron smiled faintly. "I am not trying to stop the galaxy. I am showing that one human can stand for what is right. That is enough." The dragons shifted behind him, moving in unison, their size and calm presence creating a barrier of power without violence. The aliens could feel it. They could see that these dragons were not wild beasts. They were intelligent, aware, and capable of judgment. Aaron continued to speak, slowly bridging the gap between the humans and the dragons. He told them stories of the dragons' past, of how they had been treated, and why freedom mattered. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He only spoke the truth. The dragons listened, their eyes on him and the aliens, sensing his determination. They began to understand that this human was not a threat. As the sun, or the faint light of the moon, shifted, the aliens began to retreat slowly. They realized that these dragons would not be controlled by fear, and that one human could not be ignored. The leader signaled the others to step back. Aaron lowered his hands, keeping his voice calm. "Leave them be," he said. "They do not belong to anyone but themselves." Inside the cavern, the dragons relaxed slightly. The red-eyed dragon curled its massive tail around the corner, the green-eyed one rested its head, the silver-eyed dragon lowered its wings, and the golden-eyed dragon pressed against Aaron's leg. They had not spoken or roared, but their presence was enough. The aliens had returned to their ships, silent and thoughtful, understanding that some forces in the galaxy could not be tamed by power alone. Aaron walked back into the cavern, the dragons following him closely. "It is over," he said softly. "For now." The dragons nudged him in response, and he realized that they understood more than he could know. They had felt the fear of the humans, the danger and the challenge, but they had also felt trust and courage. That night, the cavern was quiet again. The dragons settled near him, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Aaron sat among them, exhausted but calm. He knew the galaxy would not forget them and that others would come again. But he also knew that as long as he stayed, the dragons had a chance to remain free. They had remembered pain and chains, but they had also remembered kindness. Aaron looked at the 4 dragons and for the first time, he felt that his presence had made a difference. The galaxy had come back, bringing danger, but it had also shown that courage and patience could create bonds stronger than fear. The dragons were still wary, still cautious, but they no longer saw him as a visitor. He had become part of their world and they had become part of his. For the first time in centuries, the mine was not a place of fear. It was a place of hope, where a human could stand, and the dragons could choose to trust again. Outside, the stars of the galaxy shone quietly as if watching, waiting to see what would come next. Aaron woke to the quiet of the mine, but he knew it would not last. The hum of distant engines had returned, soft at first, then louder, echoing across the tunnels. Ships were approaching again, more organized, more determined. Word had spread through the galaxy about the dragons and the human who stayed with them. This time it was not curiosity, this time it was a test. Aaron stood slowly, brushing the dust from his clothes, and looked at the 4 dragons. They were alert, tense, and ready, but they did not move forward. They waited for him to lead. He took a deep breath and stepped toward the entrance. "Stay calm," he whispered to the dragons. "I will do the talking." Outside, the alien forces landed on the rocky ground. This group was larger than before, armed and ready to reclaim what they called their property. The leader, tall and stern, gestured for Aaron to step aside. "Move, human. These dragons belong to the galaxy. Do not interfere." Aaron shook his head. "They belong to no one. Not to the galaxy, not to me. They belong to themselves." The leader frowned. "You cannot stop us. One human against the might of the fleet? Step aside or we will act." Aaron did not move. His voice was calm but firm. "If you try to take them by force, you will fail. They will not fight because they are wild, they will fight because they are free. And they will not forget who stood with them." The aliens paused. They had seen the dragons before, but this time the humans' confidence made them hesitate. Inside the mine, the dragons shifted. The red-eyed one stepped forward slightly, its tail brushing the rocks. The green-eyed dragon circled closer, its massive body alert. The silver-eyed dragon raised its head, wings partially spread, and the golden-eyed dragon pressed against Aaron's leg. They trusted him, and that trust was their shield. Aaron knew that if he wavered, they might lose hope. He raised his hands slowly, showing he carried nothing. "I ask you to see them not as weapons but as beings with thoughts and feelings," he said. "You came here to claim them, to take what is not yours. But I am standing here because someone must make a choice that others will not. I am asking you to leave them free." The leader's voice was harsh. "And if we do not? What can one human do?" Aaron smiled faintly. "I do not know what I can do alone. But I know what I will do. I will stay. I will not run. And if that means standing between you and them, then I will." The aliens exchanged glances. This was unusual. They expected fear, not courage. They expected to move forward without challenge. Instead, they found a human who refused to give way. The dragons moved with him, not aggressively but deliberately. The red-eyed dragon lifted its head, the green-eyed one leaned closer, the silver-eyed dragon's wings spread slightly, and the golden-eyed dragon nudged Aaron's side. The aliens could see the power behind them now, not in the form of attacks but in presence. The dragons were enormous, intelligent, and calm. They did not strike, but they did not need to. The quiet strength of a bond between human and dragon was enough. Hours passed with tension growing. The aliens advanced carefully, testing the limits. Aaron did not flinch. He spoke softly to the dragons, reminding them to stay calm. He spoke to the aliens, repeating the truth about the dragons' suffering and freedom. Slowly, some soldiers lowered their weapons. The leader's frown deepened, realizing that control could not be gained through force here. Finally, one of the aliens spoke. "Why are you risking your life for them?" Aaron met the gaze steadily. "Because someone has to. Because we have the choice to protect, not conquer. Because that is the choice only humans make sometimes. To stay, to care, to fight for what is right even when it is hard." The words echoed across the cavern. The dragons rumbled softly behind him, their trust in him visible in every movement. The aliens stepped back. They understood now that these dragons were not weapons to be controlled. They were beings with minds, feelings, and freedom. The human had stood without fear, without violence, and that had changed everything. The leader waved his hand, signaling retreat. Slowly, the alien ships lifted and moved away, leaving the mine and its inhabitants untouched. Aaron breathed deeply, letting the tension leave his body. The dragons moved closer, their massive forms surrounding him protectively, not as prisoners but as allies. The red-eyed dragon lowered its head slightly, the green-eyed dragon rested near the entrance, the silver-eyed dragon's wings folded, and the golden-eyed dragon pressed against him softly. They had chosen to trust him, and in turn he had chosen to protect them. Night fell over the mine, but the cavern glowed softly with mineral light. Aaron sat in the center, exhausted but calm. He looked at the dragons and smiled. "We did it," he whispered. "Not with weapons, not with force, but with patience and courage. We did it together." The dragons rumbled in response, low and steady, a sound that spoke of understanding and respect. For the first time in centuries, the mine was not a place of fear or chains. It was a place where choices mattered, where courage and patience had protected those who could not protect themselves. Aaron realized that humans could make a difference in ways no one expected. They could stand alone and still change the course of events. They could make the choice to care, and that could be stronger than any army. Outside, the stars of the galaxy shone quietly. Ships had retreated, but the memory of courage and trust remained. The dragons had learned something new, that one human could stand where others fled, and that trust and loyalty could be stronger than fear. Aaron had stayed, and in doing so, he had created a bond that could last a lifetime. The dragons curled around him as he sat, and for a moment all was calm. They had faced the galaxy together and survived without a single strike. Aaron understood then that sometimes the most important battles were not fought with weapons. They were fought with patience, courage, and the quiet choice to stay when leaving would be easier. In the cavern, the dragons rested, and Aaron rested with them. Outside, the galaxy would continue to watch, but it had already learned something. Humans could make choices that mattered, and sometimes that was enough to protect the free. Aaron woke to the quiet of the mine once more. The 4 dragons lay around him, breathing slowly, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. He had faced the galaxy, stood between armies and dragons, and proved that patience and courage could protect even the most feared creatures. Yet, as he looked at them, he realized something important. He did not want to leave. Not yet. The mine, once a place of fear and chains, had become home. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Aaron moved among the dragons with ease. He cleaned parts of the cavern, repaired broken walls, and found comfortable resting places for them. The dragons followed him quietly, their massive forms moving like shadows across the rocks. The red-eyed dragon, bold and watchful, often patrolled the tunnels near the entrance, alert to any danger. The green-eyed dragon explored new paths, curious about every corner of the mine. The silver-eyed dragon remained calm and steady, watching Aaron with wise eyes, while the golden-eyed dragon stayed closest to him, gentle and trusting. Aaron brought supplies from the outside when he could, but he did not rely on them entirely. He learned to live simply, finding water in hidden streams and food in safe storage places. He knew the dragons did not need him to survive, but he felt needed by them. Each day they grew more comfortable with his presence. They did not see him as an intruder nor as a visitor. They saw him as part of their world. Occasionally, explorers or travelers came near the mine, curious about the rumors of dragons. Aaron met them quietly, explaining that the dragons were not wild beasts, but intelligent beings who deserved freedom. Most listened and left quietly, leaving the dragons untouched. Some doubted him, thinking a human could not protect creatures so powerful. But when the dragons appeared, calm and enormous, it became clear that Aaron's bond with them was real. No one dared challenge him. Years passed. The mine became a sanctuary. The dragons moved freely, curling in different tunnels, exploring hidden chambers and resting near glowing mineral walls. They had learned to trust Aaron completely, and in return he trusted them. The red-eyed dragon would sometimes brush against him, the green-eyed dragon would nudge him playfully, the silver-eyed dragon would lower its massive head near him in quiet companionship, and the golden-eyed dragon remained a constant presence by his side. Together they had created a world of safety and respect. Aaron grew older. His hair grayed and his hands showed the marks of work and time. Yet he never left the mine. The galaxy had offered him chances to return, to leave and live among other humans, but he had refused. This place, with dragons who had been feared and abandoned, was where he belonged. The dragons had been trapped for centuries, but Aaron chose to stay, proving that loyalty and care could outlast fear and power. Sometimes Aaron thought about the humans outside. He wondered if they would understand what he had learned. That strength was not always in force, that courage was not always in fighting. The dragons had taught him patience, understanding, and quiet wisdom. And he had taught them that not all humans were cruel, that one human could make a difference, even against the galaxy itself. One evening, Aaron sat near the center of the cavern. The dragons curled around him, their immense bodies forming a protective circle. He looked at them, feeling the warmth of their presence. "We have done well," he whispered. "We have made a place where no one fears, where we are free." The dragons responded with soft rumbles, a sound that was both deep and comforting. It was their way of saying they agreed, that they were happy, and that they had chosen him as part of their lives. As years turned into decades, Aaron grew weaker. He could no longer climb the tunnels or move as quickly as he once did. Yet the dragons stayed close, gentle and protective. They nudged him, helped him move through the cavern, and even guided him to fresh water or warm resting places. The mine, which had once been dark and lonely, was now filled with quiet life and trust. One day Aaron knew his time was near. He looked at the dragons, their eyes glowing in the soft light, and smiled. "I am ready," he whispered. The dragons circled him, their massive forms close, protective and comforting. The red-eyed dragon lowered its head near him, the green-eyed dragon rested beside him, the silver-eyed dragon's wings folded gently, and the golden-eyed dragon pressed against his chest softly. They had waited for this moment, not with fear but with understanding. Aaron closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of the dragons and the calm of the mine. He thought about the years he had spent here, about the choices he had made, and about the bond that had formed between human and dragon. He had stayed when leaving would have been easier, and in that choice, he had found a life richer than any human could have expected. When he finally passed, the dragons stayed near him. They did not leave. They stayed in the cavern, keeping watch, curling around him as if guarding his spirit. The mine became more than a home, it became a monument to trust, courage, and loyalty. Visitors from distant stars would come and leave quietly, understanding that this place was sacred. The dragons and the human who had stayed with them had created a legacy that no one could take away. The dragons lived on, free and proud, but they always remembered Aaron. His courage had given them safety, his patience had given them trust, and his choice to stay had given them a life beyond fear. Across the galaxy, stories spread quietly of a human who stayed with dragons, not to conquer, not to control, but to care. The mine, once dark and feared, was now a sanctuary. Aaron's life ended there, but his story continued, carried in the eyes of the dragons who waited, watched and protected the place they had chosen together. And for centuries, anyone who entered the mine could feel it, the quiet truth that humans could do more than fight or rule. They could stay. They could care. They could change lives, even the lives of beings as mighty as dragons. Aaron had stayed forever. And in staying he had done what only humans could do.